Welcome to One-on-One. I'm Greg Bassey, your host from the Salisbury Independent newspaper. We are on the road today at the Comptroller's office at Salisbury University here at Seagull Square because we have the chief tax collector for the state of Maryland right here. We're in his office, Peter Franchot. Welcome, Peter.
Greg, thank you. And I enjoyed being here. Happy to take your questions. Sorry you had to announce to everybody I'm the tax collector.
Well, I know you hate being called that, but this is the time of year when you're the man.
Well, I am a lucky guy because I've got a great job, a great agency that I head up. It's elected statewide, but it's not as high visibility as some of the Annapolis offices and the governors. So I'm able to concentrate on fiscal issues, and I think people generally give me a pretty much of a thumbs up as I go around the state. So it's great to be here on the Lower Shore. Big fan of Salisbury, big fan of Wycomico. Jake Day's one of my favorite mayors. I talk about him all over the state. He's a veteran. He gets things done. Seems that like there's some construction and some forward momentum down at Salisbury.
A lot of good things happening here right now.
And then the university, Salisbury University, is something that institution that I'm very partial to. I think it's got huge potential.
Well, your big role as the tax guy, I have to admit, and compliment you as a consumer. I got my refund in 9 days.
Well, fabulous. That's 3 days. That's 3 times what the average is.
Okay.
So we must have had to take a really close look at it.
I'm sure I'm on someone's list.
Yeah, well, it's good you're making money, I would say, I assume. But no, we concentrate on customer service, and I say to the staff, look, it doesn't matter so much what you say. It's the fact that you respect the taxpayer, respond to the taxpayer, get results for the taxpayer. That customer service is what we want, so I'm delighted to hear your return was at least processed. And we're averaging about 2.1 business days when we receive a return electronically, business days, not the weekend.
Right.
And putting your money back in your bank account. So we're very pleased with that. Most of us wait until April 17th this year as the deadline because we owe money to the state, and they have to pry our cold hands open to get it, and so we delay to the last day.
And that's when you do become the tax collector.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a big operation, and we collect about $17 billion in taxes.
Wow, that's really impressive. I remember the basement there at the building. Is it the Goldstein building or the
Yep.
James building?
Goldstein building.
Boy, packed with people doing the tax forms. I guess that's probably not the same way anywhere as I remember.
No, because it's shifted from 40% people filing electronically to 90% filing electronically, and that's a big change as far as opening up the mountain of mail. The mountain has become more of a molehill, and but the technology is good because it allows us to get refunds back speedily. Also, the technology allows us to keep a cover or lid on the epidemic of fraud that we see. So we use the technology for speedy refunds. We also use it to sift out questionable returns.
Yeah, and your press office does a great job of getting out those fraud alerts. And you go after those fraud guys, those tax preparers who are engaging in fraud, and it's pretty widespread.
Well, a lot of the tax preparers are sending us returns that they have fudged on behalf of their clients, and our system now is picking it up. We say to these tax preparers, there are about 100 of them that we've told, you guys are on quarantine now. We are not, probation, I guess. We are not going to process your returns until you prove to us that what you're doing is on the level. And very few of them come in. So we've had a lot of success as far as tax preparers. We urge people to utilize tax preparers that they know and are on the level. Don't go to someone who's a palm reader one day and a tax preparer the next. Just don't do it because they're probably going to get you in trouble. So we're taking care of that issue quite a bit. What we haven't been able to get a handle on is the out-of-state electronically filed returns that just come in. We don't pay out the false refund. We put them aside, but getting some of those folks into court, and if they're found guilty, sentenced to jail, that is our goal this year. So hopefully we'll have some news on that. The governor and the legislature gave us some new powers to subpoena and get records so that the prosecutors can decide if they want to file these cases. And we only need a couple. If we're able to put 6 or 7 people away in jail for the consequences of their illegal activity, that would be a big improvement.
You're real popular down here right now because we are a big brew town. Our Evolution Brewer guys are here, craft brewers, the Knorr brothers.
Sure.
And you've worked with them. And there's some legislation going on right now in the General Assembly. You have a column in our paper this week where you tout why, even if you don't drink beer, craft breweries are important. So talk about that. What's going on with that?
Well, it's a great issue. I started out with the idea a year ago to make Maryland the #1 state in the country for welcoming and appreciating craft brewers. Craft brewers make beer in Maryland. They tend to be small family-owned breweries. Evolution's a little bigger than some, and the Knorr brothers Tom and John are to be complimented. But they represent a big sector of economic activity. They employ 6,500 people. So sky's the limit as far as future growth. And what we're doing there, the reason I wrote that thing about people that don't drink beer, why should they be interested? Number one, we're not increasing beer consumption. We're simply getting the out-of-state craft beer that's being imported now replaced with Maryland brewed beer because that represents a lot more economic activity. Furthermore, it bolsters the state's business reputation and the state's reputation with millennials and this new generation that don't like Budweiser or Coors. They want Evo. So it's a kind of win-win thing. The problem is the legislature is very opposed to the craft brewers because they're very much on the side of distributors, and it has to do a lot with special interest politics and protectionism and keeping what they have or what they perceive as their turf. So it's run into some choppy water, and this year we've got legislation, House Bill 518. We're urging people to come to Annapolis on week from Friday, February 23rd, and come and help us modernize the state's beer laws so that we, instead of being almost dead last as far as the reputation for craft beer around the country, we can go up and be in one, 2, or 3. At a minimum, we want to get ahead of Pennsylvania and Virginia and Delaware because these folks are now poaching all of our breweries because the perception is that the legislature is not supportive.
Yeah, Maryland was kind of slow to come to it, and I think you've helped that a lot. I don't know where we'd be without you helping promote that.
Well,
because the Knorr got started in Delaware, right across the line in Delmar, because Maryland was so unforgiving in terms of the legislation.
Well, it's a tough job, Greg. Someone's got to do it. I got to promote the local beer. I got to make some site visits. And I am the state's chief alcohol regulator. I didn't realize it when I ran for the office. So it's, to me, become something that has enormous public support. I mean, Republicans, Democrats, conservatives, liberals, all of them have craft beer partisans among them. And it's very popular. And the governor's supportive. I'm obviously supportive, and we could double, triple, quadruple the workforce. I mentioned 6,500 jobs. What about the $300 or $400 million in wages they pay? What about the $637 million in economic activity? We could double, triple, or quadruple that within a couple of years if we just stepped back and said, okay, we're not going to give you guys anything special, but we're not going to harass you.
Right. And the first time I saw you get engaged in the alcohol thing was down in Worcester County, where they couldn't figure out what they were going to do with their dispensary system, and it got so politicized. And you kind of entered that as the voice of reason, and ended up constructing a deal which makes sense for Worcester County. And I know the people who have the restaurants are very appreciative of what happened down there.
Well, it's the genius of the private sector
Right.
System. I mean, we have this system of free enterprise, and funny thing about it, it actually works. But when government gets involved and is picking the winners and the losers and based on who gives them money and who is helpful to them in the elections, it becomes off center and starts to wobble. So we're basically suggesting that the government should always be there to regulate public safety and underage drinking and all of that. We're very vigilant on that. But as far as the business side of it, whether there's franchise law or contract law that applies to the relationships, things like that, why don't we let the market decide who the winners and losers are?
You mentioned the governor earlier. You're on the Board of Public Works with the governor, so you're one of the three people who pretty much decide everything is going to happen in the state. That's how it seems in terms of what gets spent where. And can be a ticklish arrangement in years past, but you guys seem to be a pretty good team.
Well, first of all, I like him personally. I think that he's very popular around the state, but he's also an adult, and he's said to me frequently, look, I'm a Republican, you're a Democrat, let's put the politics aside, just try to do the best thing for the citizens of the state, and I think that's very well received by people because that's a perception. It's not to say he's going to support me in my election or that I'm going to support him in his election. We're not going to let our politics get in the way. In fact, when he says, gee, what can I do for you because we're getting along so well, I say, Governor, keep your distance because it is heavy toxic seas out there. I'm just trying to stay afloat.
Well, it was just a year ago you were here in town and you had a conversation as part of the Greater Salisbury Committee event, you and the governor, and talked about bipartisanship, the things that you all have in common. And people still talk about that. It was a very inspiring event. We all got to see another side of you guys as politicians and as policymakers, and it just seemed made us all feel real good about things in Annapolis.
Well, why shouldn't we feel good about the state of Maryland? I mean, you've got leaders who believe in the rule of law, believe in fiscal responsibility, moral decency, and we don't want to tear each other down in public. And that forum that you mentioned was where I mentioned we don't tear each other down in public, even though we're from different parties. And he chimed in and said, I don't even say bad things about you in private. I thought that was hilarious because, so I think it's a good model for other states and folks to realize that most of politics, the governing side, should be nonpartisan and objective.
Another cool thing, you were in town last year, you present your Golden Hammer Award?
Silver Hammer
Award. The people in Modelo Springs are still talking about your visit to their school, and that's where you reward groups for taking good care of state resources. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think that's a great value that we have, particularly in not the big counties of the state, but the smaller counties have a air of frugality about them. It may be mandatory because they don't have much money, but whatever it is, they take care of what they have. So I have the Silver Hammer Awards that I go and give to maintenance crews around the state, along with the principal, of course.
And there it's the Northwestern Elementary School and the high school. It's an older facility, but when you walk in, it is pristine in there.
Yeah, it's like the military. It's good stuff. But and a lot of counties see these school facilities particularly as disposable, so they don't take particularly good care of them. So we emphasize that, and I think that's a proper direction because we just don't have enough money to build new schools all the time. Now, I will mention that I have for years said that the casino money was a bit of a fiscal fairy tale, that the casino tax money
you were right about that.
Was not going to education. It was simply supplanting existing education money that would have been dedicated for education if casinos had never come. So there's no net increase. Well, that has now reached the point where both the Democrats and the Republicans in Annapolis say we got to correct that, and we're going to put a lockbox in whatever the heck a lockbox is.
Right, that was just announced this week, the lockbox.
Yeah, so
which
anyway.
reminded me of Al Gore with the Social Security lockbox.
Exactly.
But what is the lockbox for people?
The lockbox is that everybody thinks that there is a way to create something where money can be put into it and not the lock will never be picked. I laugh because I spent 20 years on the Appropriations Committee as a legislator, and we picked the lock on every lockbox there was. I apologize for that, but So the issue here is whether now going on forward from here, can we truly make the casino money be what it was promised to be, slots for tots,
Right.
which implied that it was going to be new money on top of the old money. Well, it wasn't. It just replaced the old money. So now, from here on out, they're going to phase in, I think, assuming they can work out the methodology of whether it's a statute or whether it's a constitutional amendment. They are going to work out a concept that keeps the faith with the people, as some of them have mentioned. So it's good news for kids in public schools around the state, because the governor has decided to put part of it towards school construction, and those needs, despite good maintenance, those needs are still pretty crucial. And then operating dollars can be freed up. We're talking about, I think, $1 billion over 10 years for school construction and $4 billion for operating expenses. So it's good news for the education system, which, properly managed, can utilize that money.
It's great to see the state as a whole. The test scores are so good. We have a great state-supported education system. Most of the counties do a really good job. And I know down here in Wycomico, we really appreciate how much money the state does give us, because our county doesn't really do.
Right.
They meet the maintenance of effort, but they don't really do what they probably should do. And it's great that the state is so supportive.
Right. And all I ask is that supporters of education also be supporters of small business, because the only reason the state can afford that is through the success of the private sector. So we sometimes get into, I'm for education, but I'm not for business. Well, you got to be for both. And I think that's what the shore represents. Partly, other parts of the state are a little more one-sided.
That's a big part of your job, too, determining what the revenues are going to be and making sure that we're well represented in the bond market and that we keep our great bond rating.
Yeah, we have a AAA bond rating now. Let me be candid. Most of that is attributable to the fact that we are so quick to raise taxes, and that pays off the bonds, obviously, and that's all the rating agencies in New York really care about. But I think now we've got a more moderate approach to our fiscal matters, and I think that's good. Obviously, we value the AAA rating, and not very many states get it. And we're running a pretty tight ship. Governor Hogan has limited debt in a way that I approve of, because that was getting to be a big problem for us. And the operating budget, thanks to the Board of Public Works that you mentioned, we're able in real time, Greg, to cut state spending. We don't have to wait until the next legislative session. We can reduce any state agency by up to 25% of its budget
Wow.
when the legislature's not in session. So it is a very useful fiscal tool. And
As-
the rating agencies like it.
As a reporter, those Board of Public Works meetings have kind of lost some of the drama because you guys are, like you said, adults. You're well reasoned, and it used to be kind of fun to go to those.
Yeah, well, it was kind of a three-ring circus for a while. But
I think
now,
even you and Governor O'Malley did not always see eye to eye to.
yeah, well, that's what happens when you're on the losing side of a 2-1 vote. But now I'm on the winning side, and it's much better for the state because you can see two folks that are sincerely working in a bipartisan way. And I emphasize the sincerity because everybody says bipartisan, and nobody really believes it or engages in it. But for better or for worse, there's some sincerity there between Governor Hogan and myself that the people expect us not to fight. They want us to get the job done.
So I have to complain personally about something. We've had some snow days this year, and my daughter was looking forward to her President's Day weekend going away to New York City. And now with the snow and the Labor Day, post-Labor Day school start, she's going to have to go to school on Monday. She can't go to New York City. So she's mad at you because now school started after Labor Day. She's a senior in high school, so it's never going to affect her again. But what's been the reaction? I think it's been a great thing that school started after Labor Day. That was your idea, basically, in response to what was needed in Ocean City. How's that gone?
Well, it was an idea that started in Western Maryland. I was at the Lakeside Creamery out there at Deep Creek Lake, and the gentleman that was running it said, come August, I have to hire Bulgarians to work here because all the Maryland kids have to go back to school.
Right.
So that's where the idea started, and it spread very quickly. You're right, Ocean City benefits greatly, and for years I advocated starting school after Labor Day because I thought it was good for the kids and good for families and good for small businesses. And got kind of the back of the hand, and then Governor Hogan nicely made it the law of the land through executive order. It's proved to be a huge success. We're never going to get rid of it. I don't care who they elect. There would be people with pitchforks in Annapolis if they tried to get rid of school after Labor Day because it's predictable, and the concern that your daughter expresses can be people if they simply looked at the school calendar and instead of trying to undermine school after Labor Day and make it really bad and onerous for your daughter, if they actually did it in an orderly, smart way, they could fit the 180 days in.
Yes.
Without
that they can.
Without that kind of drama.
Well, she was trying to blame Governor Hogan. I said, no, really.
Yeah.
Comptroller Franchot.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. In fact, he often looks at me and says, the critics of that, they really hate me for that. What happened to you? Where'd you go? And I said, well, it's just when you're governor, you get all the praise and all the heat.
Well, we loved it this year.
It's worked out tremendously well.
In terms of family vacations and what happens that last week in Ocean City, it really has changed that dynamic.
Yeah, well, you can count on it forever because it's never going to go away because it works. Small businesses love it because they get an extra week of the summer. But it's not strictly for them. I did it simply out of a Norman Rockwell, wouldn't America be great if we could have a real summer vacation? Let summer be summer, I think is the slogan. And the economic data is there, but I think also when you look at the polls, it's still very, very popular. So tell your daughter to hang in there.
General Assembly, always fun through April. It's an election year. Things are usually calmer, it seems like, historically around an election year. How are things going to go in the Assembly as we get to April?
It's hard to say. I don't really know what's going to happen to the beer reform issue, which is something that we talked about earlier and that you put in a lot of time on. It's just unclear. It's a very volatile political climate out there nationally and in the state.
The sick leave thing was passed and has been implemented.
Right, but there's just a lot of angst down there, a lot of unease, a lot of anxiousness in Annapolis. Part of it's just we don't really know what the climate's going to be like. I tell people just do your job, show up, be moderate, and try not to be overly partisan because that doesn't really work.
Our economy looks good for a while?
Yes, it looks excellent for the next 2 years. After that, could go to hell in a handbasket because we've got a properly functioning economy that's growing. We've injected all of these tax cuts at the federal level, and a lot of economists say a couple of years down the road we need to be careful about inflation and interest rates going up and a recession. So yes, the answer is yes for the next couple of years, but jury's out on the long term.
He's Peter Franchot. He's our comptroller. He's our tax collector here in Maryland. It's his time of year, and we're thrilled to be a guest in his office today in Salisbury. Thanks for having us here.
All the best, Greg. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'm Greg Bassett from the Salisbury Independent newspaper. Another edition of 101 right here on PAC 14.
First Shore Federal is proud to support PAC 14 and one-on-one. We'd encourage every business to support PAC 14 and pick a program and support it, and let's make a difference.
First of all, I just want to thank every Marylander for obviously supporting the state and the county and the jurisdictions they live in. Nobody likes to pay taxes, but it's the way in which we have good schools and hospitals and roads, et cetera. So thank you for what you represent out there. Urge you to keep your elbows up. If you're going to use a tax preparer, make sure it's a legal one, someone who you know, have confidence in. Never, ever give your Social Security number to anyone. I don't care if it's a hospital where they're asking you to sign it on a form. Just don't give it, because those records get hacked all the time, and that Social Security number can be misused by financial criminals. So keep your elbows up. Be a good cheer. Realize that we've got a strong economy here in Maryland and on the shore, and things are going to be good in 2018 and 2019. Thanks very much.